listening, and welcome to this Share the Mic and Cyber chat between me, Johnny Dunphy, and the man of the hour, Cameron Johnson. Today, we want to discuss a topic on diversity and inclusion in tech. Firstly, by way of introduction, I am Irish and I live in a small city in the southeast of Ireland called Kilkenny. I am a CSOC manager with Security Risk Advisors. We're a world-class cybersecurity consulting company with a HQ in Philadelphia, but we also have offices in Rochester and Ireland. I began my IT studies in the University of Limerick in the year 2000 when the world of tech was developing at a rapid pace, so it was a pretty exciting time. Although at the time the security space wasn't as developed within IT as it is now, it wasn't until 2015 that I actually moved over into cybersecurity. And again, this industry has been growing at an extraordinary pace since then. Well, that's enough about me. Let's get to the real reason why you're here. This young man, in a short space of time, has made a leap from learning his trade as an application developer to BISO for Warner Media. Wow, it's some leap. Cameron, tell us about yourself.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Like Johnny said, thanks for joining. My name, again, if you didn't hear, is Cameron Johnson. I'm 25 years old, and I'm from a small town called Albany, Georgia, which you've most likely never heard of before. I went to Kennesaw State and graduated with a degree in IT, information security and assurance. See, I can't even get it out of my mouth. And I work, as Johnny said, as a BSO for Warner Media. And I previously worked as a full stack software engineer at ADP as well. I'm really excited for you all to hear our conversation here. And I'll actually go ahead and move to our first topic now that we have that. So, Johnny, what I think everyone wants to hear first and foremost is, and I think this is important for anyone looking just to kind of, try things like this is I'd like to, let's just kind of go into why we both decided to do this. So if you just kind of share what made you get into Share the Mic in Cyber.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I think cyber at the minute has a long way to go in the representation of underrepresented groups. Now we can get into that a bit more on that later. But firstly, I feel like within an office, the culture of the office, having a diverse group there really enriches the team culture. I cannot overstate how important I feel it is to have a great culture in the workplace. I mean, it keeps you coming back every morning. It makes it a lot easier. So I love what Share the Mic stands for. I knew this would be a fun project to work on and meet folk from different nationalities and backgrounds. And so far, it's been great as here I am talking to your good self.
Yeah. Cool. And just share on my end, so I'm gonna blame this entirely on my boss, Nicole Dove. She also serves as a really good mentor, and she loves to do things like this. In all honesty, just to be kind of candid here, this is not normally my thing. This is actually the first one of these events that I've ever done, post grad in regards to just kind of speaking and getting my story out there in all honesty. So this was kind of like this is a first for me. I have a real passion about kind of helping others and people, in my community. I did feel like after reviewing this, I felt like it was a good idea to do. And I felt like, you know what, Cam, you might as well just take that leap of faith and just kind of get into it in all honesty. So, I'm glad to be here. And there's so much we can kind of go into about what it's done for us over these past 3.5 weeks. But it's just been great overall so far. Um, but with that in mind, yeah, I'll just go ahead and move into our first topic, which is diversity and inclusion in tech. So I want to
Yeah.
know if you remember. Do you remember our first conversation on how we kind of came up with this topic? That's kind of the first thing. Do you remember how we decided to do this and the way we're doing it right now?
Our first conversation?
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember? If you don't, it's cool. I have the story loaded up in my head, and I'll share if you don't
Yeah,
remember.
we like just for everyone's awareness, we talk for hours. We've had, huge conversations.
Yeah,
So yeah, and the stories that Cameron has shared with me have been amazing. So,
yeah.
but I can't remember
You can let me share. So
refresh my memory. Yeah.
yeah, so on our first call, we were just kind of getting to know each other. And I'll be honest, I had no clue what to do with Share the Mic and Cyber. I didn't know whether, I just wanted to do a Twitter reel or, do some sort of LinkedIn campaign. I'm not a social media guy by any means. I don't think you are either, Johnny. But
No,
we both kind of found common ground, us both being athletes. And, if you know anything about sports, teamwork is so important. And
correct.
uh I think we kind of just said, you said you're a teams guy. I know you had a coach, you coach a team right now, a youth league in Ireland and everything, which I learned a new sport. I can't remember the name of hurling. Yeah, it's hurling.
Hurling,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I learned about hurling. Yeah, I didn't know about hurling. And we decided, hey, we're both sports guys. Let's talk about diversity and inclusion, and let's apply that to technology overall. Because I believe in good teamwork, and I think that the best teams are diverse and they have different mindsets and everything else. So that's for everybody listening, that's how we kind of decided and came to a conclusion on this topic. And then Johnny, just kind of moving into this, what is your take on diversity and inclusion in technology overall? Just kind of going into that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we've lots of chats about this, but like, I think it's vital to have diversity within cybersecurity. As I mentioned earlier, the sector has a long way to go, but I do think there's good people. Obviously, people overshare the mic, and there's a whole lot of different programs and initiatives out there to bridge those gaps for underrepresented groups. Um, so at the minute, my take is it has a long way to go, but it is growing. And why do I think diversity is vital within cybersecurity? For a simple reason that bringing people in from different backgrounds, it brings different voices to the table. This in turn will help your organization's cybersecurity defenses, as you will have different people coming from different backgrounds. They'll have different concepts. Some will have different attack techniques. If you have a bunch of guys that have all been on the same training programs, where they're trained in a similar fashion, they're not going to see. They're going to see what they know.
Mm-hmm.
If you're bringing in people with different perspectives from all different areas and cultures,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to give your organization a much better defensive security posture, I believe.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of piggyback off of that, that's just such a good point that you made. And from my perspective, I think diversity and inclusion is just so important. Obviously, I am a minority in America. I'm a black male who does not see a lot of peers in my community. I didn't see a lot of peers kind of just going through, growing up and everything. We'll kind of get into that later on, but it's just so important to kind of keep pushing for that, because we have to kind of, somebody has to take that torch to push for diversity and inclusion, because that is how we kind of get to the next level in regards to technology and cybersecurity. That is how we kind of evolve as a culture and a community, and as as a society as well. It's just so important and everything. Um, Moving on, I know, Johnny, we did a survey. Let's talk about how our peers feel about diversity, inclusion, and technology. And some of the questions that I asked, and I don't know if you want to go first, I'll go first. You let me know. But we asked three questions. What do you think the tech industry can do to push diversity and inclusion? What do you think the tech industry is doing well to push diversity and inclusion? And
Mhm.
where do you think the tech industry needs to improve its push towards diversity and inclusion? So I know you had something to share on your end. So how about this? I'll read in from what I have, and I'll allow you to go. Is
Yeah,
that cool with you? All right.
perfect.
So three. I'll pick three things from our survey so far. So someone once responded, they want to say start with education from the ground up to answer that first question. Another person said recruit from every HBCU in the US. There are over 105 HBCUs in America. That's a lot of diversity. You can create those diversity and inclusion in groups inside the business as well. And lastly,
Mhm,
diversify what cities and states that you're looking for. You're
mhm.
looking for talent for. So before I move on, I'm curious. Do you know what a HBCU is? Have you ever heard of that term before?
No.
No, cool. So HBCUs are historically black colleges or universities. And this is kind of why I love our conversations, between Johnny and I, because it really acts like a learning center, and we can kind of just piggyback and teach each other topics and everything. So Johnny, I kind of went over the history in America where, there was segregation in our schooling system. Well, that
Yeah.
segregation actually extended into the postgraduate level of universities as well. So there were all so there spawned these colleges where African American men and women were actually finally able to attend, college and university to get their postgraduate degrees to kind of go on to those higher paying jobs. So that is where that and though and in the future now it's been some of them exist for hundreds of years or 100 years now. Those schools have the moniker known as HBCU. So they kind of are almost a legacy that kind of fulfills, our struggle
Wow.
to get a fair education and everything. Um, yeah, and moving on to our next question, which was again, what do you think the tech industry is doing well to push diversity and inclusion? Someone said they're reaching out in non-traditional ways of recruiting.
Hmm.
Another response was keeping the conversation going amongst the Fortune 500 companies, and they keep providing opportunities in some ways. And then lastly, they are hosting more events for people to learn about opportunities and enhance their skill sets. And then
Yeah.
our third and last question for this segment or for that part of this survey, from our responders. And thank you if you did submit some survey replies. I really appreciate it. We didn't want to drag this out too long, so I picked three of the good ones, or three of the ones that caught my eye, and I just wanted to kind of fire them off. So the last question is, where do you think the tech industry needs to improve its push towards diversity and inclusion? Uh, and the first respondent said there will always be room for improvement. Promote the diverse talent within the interview panel so that the entry level talent looks similar to what you're hiring for. And that means, I think that's very important to mean that, somebody can kind of come in and see people that look like them on the interview panel so they aren't super apprehensive, they aren't nervous, and they feel comfortable because comfortability in interviews is a huge part. It's something I've had to deal with. That's probably something you had to learn how to deal with. And it just helps to see a familiar face sometimes.
Yeah.
Another respondent said, lobby governments to ensure education is open to all. I absolutely agree with that. You know how I feel about education. I really, really, I'm super, super. I guess I can't even think of the word. Like I'm passionate about education and getting
Yeah.
out to everyone. And
Passionate.
then
Yeah.
yeah. And then lastly, go where the diversity is. Seek out those HBCUs. Do more career fairs there, and keep hosting more virtual events for more diverse groups. So it's really just a call to arms from our respondents to kind of just keep keep pushing what you're doing well, keep having the introspection, and kind of keep pushing it forward. So I'm interested to hear, what have you heard on your end? What do you think? What are some good points about diversity and inclusion and tech that we can kind of look to kind of move forward with?
No, you've touched on a lot of them, those areas, well, particularly the targeting. I mean, that's something that um, I know many organizations are doing right now. They get you'll get a certain level of CVs in the door, but I guess it's just to inform people and let people know that we're here, we're willing to accept your CV and come and interview, go through the interview process with us. Um, like just groups out there, Blacks in Cyber, Women in Cyber. There's many conferences where you guys, the companies can go to and recruit from those areas. Um, Also, like I would say that a lot of companies they can't be afraid to hire entry level hires. Um, you'd often come across companies that if you only hire experienced, it's harder to build that diverse culture. You have to be prepared to to look at some people, and basically all you're doing with people is you're looking for their aptitude, you're looking for their passion for cyber. Um, Same way as you've got passion for education, there's people, they don't always necessarily have to have their 4 years of their degree. Um, there's other means and ways in. I've met a lot of people that have they've been working as a carpenter and they've took a sudden segue in their career to be in cybersecurity. They've come from a completely different industry, but they've showed aptitude, they showed passion for cyber, and they're getting on really well. I can honestly say some of the smartest guys that I've ever worked with, they've never
Mhm.
went to college. They've
Yeah.
just they've done they've done their certificates. They've worked in the industry. They've just kicked on with their career by learning themselves, online certificates. It doesn't always have to be directly through the college. There's many ways into the industry at the minute. There's so many online learning courses.
Hmm.
Organizations, they need to be astute in spotting these folks with that aptitude and that passion and give them the chance. When they're in your company, then from there,
Hmm.
that's where you got to develop your internal training setup to help guys to level up.
Hmm.
I think it's important for companies to map a learning path. Once you take on this entry level hire, map
Hmm.
out a learning path from wherever they want to go, be it a developer or engineer, pen tester, um, wherever they want to go. If you have the pathway for them, the channel is prepared for them, then they know what to do. They know how to what to follow. They can take their courses and they'll get through and they'll get wherever they want to be.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, you said something that really spoke to me earlier, so I'm gonna just go to that really quickly. You
Yeah,
said hire people who do not have the experience. I remember complaining uh to an executive in my last company about that, where I feel as if there are no entry level positions in cybersecurity. You have to come with a stacked resume, and
yeah,
and it's caused such a weird,
hmm,
aura about the industry. I feel like, where you have to people are literally certification hunting, they're stacking certs, they're just trying to find ways to pad credentials right now. And it's gone from, what can you do? Are you a good communicator?
yeah,
To how many certifications can I cram
yeah,
for? How many hundreds of dollars am I spending? And it's just like that creates such a weird, I feel like, working environment, because everybody is almost, they feel like once they get the job, they have to fake it almost. They're scared to be candid with one another and to say, I don't know. And I mean, that's a lesson I learned as a software engineer. You have to learn how to say, I don't know. And I mean, that's just honest to God, the truth. You have to be able to say that. And another thing that you said as well, when it comes to um, in schooling, I feel like practical experience is a must. Theoretical is fine, but that's not what they're going
yeah,
to ask you on an interview, like it. And that's kind of why people are scared to hire those newbies in the sense, because they know they don't have any practical skills. They know these students don't know how to, let's say if to digest a policy in a well manner and push it out. They know they don't know how to actually use Splunk or whatever tools you use in your
hmm,
day-to-day work life to kind of push this stuff out. And I think that, that practicality and that, that faith, and that people will kind of build this like mesh of good kind of faith and moving forward. And then once they're on the job, it's almost like, once you've hired somebody, you need to treat that as an investment. It doesn't need to be like, how can I say this? I don't think if you ran to a guy in your sock who was kind of lacking as a manager, I feel like I've been able to talk to you as much. I feel like if you saw somebody lacking in an area, you talk to them about how they're lacking and then push them to become a better version of themselves. And that's what a good leader does. And I take that's what you are from our conversations. And I think that is a positive way to kind of reinforce a healthy area of cybersecurity. I think that's very important. That's
for sure.
also that's also how you kind of create that comfortable and non-toxic and diverse and inclusive organization. That is the inclusive part of diversity and inclusion. You have those open conversations and everything else. Um, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of get into before we move
Yeah.
on to our next topic?
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, I think the
Yeah,
next topic is what I
yeah.
want to hear your stories on.
So our next topic, and this is just gonna be a brief spiel from me. We decided, Johnny and I told him about my education. I
Yeah.
told him about my kind of path to into being a software engineer, and I tell you, it was a little bit of a trip. I'll be honest, but I did it. And then my kind of migration into cybersecurity. So I decided I wanted to kind of share what it was like for me kind of going from zero to where I am right now. I still feel like I have a long way to go. I'm just 25 years old, and my career is really just starting. But yeah, so just to get you guys started off again, I'll kind of peel you in. And John, if you have any questions for me, you want to chime in,
Yeah.
just let me know. But just to start you guys off again, I'm from Albany, Georgia. It's a small town in Southwest Georgia, obviously. And I feel like growing up a lot of the time, I took school seriously. And I remember I told you a story about the type of school that I went to. It was known as a
Hmm.
magnet school. If you don't know what a magnet school is, and I'm not super duper familiarized with the concept, but basically it's like supposed to be the quote unquote good public school in the area. And you get in, at least in the primary school level or the elementary school level, by way of raffle. So before I was even born, my older brother, um, he won the raffle to get into this magnet school. And from that point forward, I feel like my life was kind of changed because these magnet schools, they get extra funding. They quote unquote, they can have, quote unquote, have the best teachers. They get more resources. They have the, the newest stuff. They go to the magnet schools first. So I feel like my life was changed already before I was even born by that. I just got lucky. So I was grandfathered, or I guess big brothered into this magnet school program, and I went through everything in Albany. I went through middle school and high school there. And I feel like I had no clue what I wanted to be growing up. The concept of software engineer, cybersecurity analyst, ethical hacker, all of that, it didn't exist. It just was not a thing. It never once was on my radar. At one time, I didn't know any of those was a job. And I remember telling you, it was either, my parents, they obviously, or not obviously, but thankfully, I had the privilege of having parents who did go to college before me. So there was no option. I was going to college, but I had no clue what I wanted to do. And through my entire life, I heard lawyer, doctor, or engineer. I was going to do that. So I took my three potential job titles, and I went to college. I went to Kennesaw State. I registered as a biotechnical major, and aspiring to become a biomedical engineer, not knowing
Yeah.
really what that was at all. I had no clue what that was at all, but I said, you know what, hey, I'm gonna do it. And I started going to class. I got my grades in, and I kind of realized through my first year, I don't want to do this. So I had like a moment of shock and awe, because it was just like I was like, okay, well, what do I do then? And we talked about it. I'm big into video games. So I was like, okay, let's see, what does that actually entail? So I remember I built a gaming PC. I kind of got into like looking at the specs. I was like, okay, could I be a computer engineer? I was like, I don't necessarily want to do that. And I kind of got set my eye on software engineering. So I changed my degree to computer science, and
Mhm.
I enrolled in my first Java course. And
Yeah.
it was hard. It was hard. It was really, really hard. I had never once in my life coded. I had pressed F12 before, and if you guys are seeing what's happening, I think in Missouri they call F12 pressing hacking now, which isn't true. But hey, um, I had seen some source code before, but I had no clue what I was doing at all. It was a complete foreign concept to me, and I really, really struggled through that class. I was going to office hours every week. This was, I was an A student, but this was going to be my first F if I didn't get my life together. And
And
I
and
remember,
the
yeah,
other
I was,
the other the other kids in your class, I think you were mentioned before that pretty much every one of those had some
yeah,
form of Java experience at some level.
yeah, and I'm getting into that, and so the phrase I remember exactly, and it's crazy. It's been almost 6, 7 years since that point. I remember exactly. Some of the students were like, "This is easy. I did this in middle and high
Yeah.
school," and and Johnny, that was the first time I realized that all primary education was not equal. I
Mm.
hadn't thought about that really beforehand. I really didn't seriously think about it like that, but I was ignorant to that fact. And I was like, wow, you knew about this in high school and middle school. I never had a chance to even, try this out before, so hearing that from me, how did that make you feel? Just kind of before I keep going, how did that make you feel,
Oh,
Johnny?
um, I don't. I guess I suppose it's sad to hear that you found yourself in that position. I think at this stage we have had a good number of conversations, so it's kind of yeah. From there, I guess led to curiosity. I mean, how did you get out of it? How did you get from that point there out? So yeah, I
Yeah.
was,
What was next? Yeah. So,
next. I was curious to hear the rest of that story. I mean, it was fascinating
yeah.
listening to it.
Yeah. So from that point, it was kind of like I had realized that I was behind. So I'd be lying if I said it didn't impact my confidence,
Mm,
and overall, and it impacted my confidence to become a software engineer. I I really struggled with the decision to change my major again. So I made it through the class by the skin of my teeth. I stuck to it. The next year, I was like, I'm not gonna quit. I'm not gonna quit, because there was probably, this, and just to remind you, the students in the class who had those opportunities, they were from, close to the cities, predominantly white areas in northern Georgia and everything. They had the opportunities that I didn't. So I was almost like, I have to stay in this class, because at this point, I'm not quitting. Like, I was so stubborn. I don't think I was even a good programmer. I was like, but I was just so stubborn. I was like, I'm not gonna quit this. So I moved through college. I actually, I got an A in my next coding class, and then I had a friend who worked in the cybersecurity industry. His name is Nicholas Foose, and he he worked as a software. I think he sold security tools basically, and he always put that bug in my ears: check out cybersecurity, check out cybersecurity, check out cybersecurity. So I remember watching this video from MIT about this student who he literally kind of just he brute forced some passwords. He did a dictionary attack on some passwords, and I'm like, oh my god, I think I would be got by this. So I remember changing my passwords, getting a password manager, downloading the ad blocker and everything. I'm like, is this what cybersecurity like? That seems pretty cool. So I actually changed my major to IT information security and assurance, to kind of just get into, just to see what it was like. And I set my eye on becoming an ethical hacker purely because it sounded cool. I'll be honest, it sounded cool. So I was like, I'm going to do that. So why not? So, which is crazy, I had no clue what it really was.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I was like, that sounds good. Let's do it.
Seen it on TV one day.
Yeah, I saw him just click the keyboard fast. So yeah, I did that. And then I graduated, and I actually moved to my software engineering role. I struggled with that. And then this topic, guys, listening, I'm kind of just going over, what my education, how did it impact me, and some of the struggles that I feel like it caused me in the past, and how I kind of moved past them. So my next thing was, I mentioned earlier, my confidence was impacted. I still kind of carried that forward a little bit because, even those other classes, I was a little behind still. I was making it, but I had to, put in a little extra oomph to kind of get through some of my classes because I felt like I was just so far behind. So I remember I was sitting in training. And there was this Black woman teaching the class. And this is at my previous company where I was working as a software engineer. I remember sitting through training, and I felt like I was behind other people because they were more advanced in their, and their functional programming skills. They were way more confident than I was. And I said to her, we were just kind of catching up. And I said to her, I'm not as smart as them. And her face flared. She got mad at me, and she told me, she said, "Don't you dare say that.
Yeah.
Don't you dare say that. You're just as smart as them. You made it here just like everybody else. You're just as qualified as them." And Johnny, what I didn't realize was, it was really that I didn't even realize what I had said wrong to her, and that was a shocking realization that I didn't catch until a few years later. In all honesty, So, what's your take on that part of the story? How do you feel about that? And I'll wrap it up with this. But how do you feel about that? Hearing that from me, what were you thinking about overall?
Yeah, I guess, I suppose I was trying to put myself in that situation. And I think we all have been in that space for a moment or two where you're just like, oh, this is over my head.
That
I'm
imposter syndrome.
The imposter syndrome. Yeah, we discussed that. So, it's a real thing. And I mean, I guess a lot of us will sit in, every time you start a new job, you have your, your first time you're sitting on calls, everybody else is, spitballing about ideas, and these are things you've never heard of before. So you're there, oh, I'm never going to get this. But from listening to you speaking about that, I mean, I guess I knew where the story was going to go. Again, I put myself in your position and being there, and obviously, feeling for you. But at this point, I knew you were going to get out of it. So
yeah, and I mean, to make a long story short, after that, I didn't even realize that, and I struggled for a year in my initial role. And I kind of slowly but surely, and thanks to friends, at work, thanks to my peers, thanks to my coworkers and role models and mentors, I pulled myself out of that mindset by just kind of valuing what I was doing, and I feel like I became a very proficient software engineer. I learned some new languages on the fly. I was able to kind of fill that full stack role. And then I made a leap in the cybersecurity where I'm sitting at now. And I, thank God I don't have that same mindset, but I feel like, if I didn't have that moment of realization, I could have easily been there because, it's more of the same thing, in regards to cybersecurity. There are not a lot of Black and brown people in cybersecurity, and it is, we still have a lot of room to grow, and it's just very much so. It's a steady going process, and
yeah, actually, on that point as well, you mentioned that role models. There's you didn't really have that many role models to look towards. There wasn't that many people who had walked your path before. So
Hmm.
you really just had to kind of you know make
Figure it
that
out.
figure it out yourself,
Yeah.
and believing you could do it, even though, as you say yourself, there's not that many people who've done it before you.
Mhm. Yeah, and we kind of spoke on the importance of role models and inclusion as well, and all of this stuff kind of peels and it works together because you can't have, well, let's say like this, diversity and inclusion breeds role models for the younger generation to look up
Hmm.
to, and I sit back and think about, in Albany, when I was playing, I played football and everything, a lot of
Yeah,
the time, a lot of my friends, we would talk about sports and like, going to the NBA, NFL, just how we would get over to a D1 college and everything. And um, it was not really pressed now, and sometimes it hasn't been. It's gotten better over years. It was not pressed to the Black community in times that you can make it out in other ways besides sports, And part of that is because we were not included in those other areas and fields, or we're not honored. I can name a few role models, that did things like, you probably don't know about Charles Drew, but he created blood plasma, and that was African American man. He created the blood transfusion, excuse me, and that was African American man. And a lot of this stuff isn't always taught and pushed. And I think one thing is very important for young kids to hear, is, or for everybody here, is, seeing is really believing from my eyes. Having somebody you can look up to helps kind of drive you to your end goal because you have a playbook almost to follow. So role models are so important. I obviously had my mom and my dad in
hmm
my life. They were great role models, but there were some things I just couldn't ask them because they weren't in tech, so they didn't know the right answer to this stuff. So I had to really just rely on my own, myself. I had to go find role models in a company in a corporate world that wasn't always accepting of me either, which was very difficult because you don't know who you can and can't trust. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's just such a big deal. Is there anything
yeah.
else you wanted to
No,
cover on this topic, the topic of
no,
education, before we kind of move forward?
yeah, no, I think that whole story, I think you touched on all the areas that we'd spoke about, and I think it's an amazing story. It's an inspirational story.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So moving on to our next topic, and we're actually going to close after we kind of step into this. Johnny, I'm interested to know, what have you learned doing Share the Mic in cybersecurity so far? What have you learned,
Oh,
through this through this
yeah,
through this 2.5, 3 week process of us syncing
yeah,
up at random hours, emailing each other, and then lastly
I
me
know.
downloading the app I've never heard of before. What have you learned,
Yeah,
man? I'm
yeah.
interested to hear that.
Well, I learned I don't exercise enough. Cameron's in the gym every morning at 5 mornings a week at 7 a.m. It's like, oh God, okay,
Yeah.
I'm way off. That's one big thing I know I've learned anyway. But no, seriously, look, I found it hugely educational. I mean, brought me through, the education structure in America, something that I didn't have much of an insight on. HBCU universities. I found myself researching magnet schools. We touched on kind of global topics such as white flight and how it actually impacts small towns like you're in, and not just in Georgia but all around the globe. So
Hmm.
these are things that I've been opened up my eyes to, and it's stuff that you wouldn't kind of ever it never gets discussed in general terms in a country like Ireland.
Hmm.
Um, so a lot of that area has been my main understand or my main learning curve, and
Hmm.
listening to your story, making it all real. It's been so interesting. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. What about yourself?
Honestly, I feel like, one, I've learned, I feel like I've made two new friends between you and Jordan,
Yeah.
that I might have never met before. And so I'm really thankful for doing this opportunity. I'm grateful, just to kind of get a peer eye view into your life, just to kind of look in and see how things are in Ireland, just to kind of learn how your education system works as
Yeah.
well. Just to know, some of the struggles that you all face over there, to hear the historical context, to kind of compare notes to see, I remember we talked about lineage, and I learned
Mhm.
that you had a family crest. I'm like, that's so cool. That you got like a,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's cool, and it's just overall just I feel like it's been a great opportunity to meet new people,
Yeah.
I was able to. I've learned. I was so grateful to be able to share my culture with you in regards to just talking about everything, man. So it's just been a great opportunity. And I also learned that I think I like stuff like this. I'm big on education and all that, and I
Hmm.
really like helping other people. And I feel like we've helped each other here. So that it's just
Yeah.
been great to me.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next point. I'm curious to know, how do you think you've changed, or how will you change kind of moving forward, kind of from this point forward? In regards to not only your personal life but professionally as well. Do you think there'll be any differences in you, or has it already come up?
Yeah, we've probably touched on a lot of areas, I guess, like, from what I've learned, um, about some of the research we've done, some of the answers that we got in, on the diversity and the culture in the office. Obviously, I feel like I'm way more in tune. Obviously, I, had an understanding of it, and I knew how culture and diversity was important. But I actually kind of feel like now I really, really understand how it can be valuable.
Mm,
So I think within the organization I work in now, I feel I'm going to play a bigger part than I probably would have had I not signed up for Share the Mic in Cyber.
mm.
Um, so on interview processes and CV reviewing, I'll probably look for those people in the different areas that I feel might be able to bring an extra bit of value to our team. So there's some of the big areas that I think I will change, or on the learning that I've had over the last few weeks.
Yeah. And on my side, man, I think it's exactly the same. I feel like, I feel like I kind of live in it, but I mean, it's
Hmm.
just continuing to do this, just, it fuels me because I really want to kind of create that world. So
Hmm.
every time I have an opportunity to do this, I push for it. I'm always trying to be an educator. I always want to push people to be the best person they can be. So I'm grateful that I've had the chance to talk to you about this and kind of, instill my values onto you, and you could instill your values onto me as well. So it's just been a great cultural exchange, I feel like. And then lastly, before we close, is there anything else that you want the audience to know about?
No, I think that's it from me. I mean, I just look. It's been a pleasure working with you, Cameron. Like you're an amazing person. It's I think anybody from listening to your story will understand that you have a phenomenal drive. You always want to get better. You always want to level up. And I think at this point, from listening to you, I think you're confident that you can get over any obstacle that anyone puts in your way right now.
Yeah, I
So
appreciate it.
it's been a pleasure meeting you, and I'm really impressed.
Yeah, I really appreciated that, and I have nothing to say else, but same to you. I look forward to seeing what's next for you. Uh, I hear you have a trip coming to the States pretty soon. I'm not going to tell anybody when, but I
Yeah,
told Johnny to eat lots and lots of food when he comes because they don't make it like
yeah.
that over there.
No,
But
I'm looking
yeah,
forward to the food.
yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah, I
roll me
mean,
back on the plane.
yeah, I really appreciate it, man. To everyone listening right now, I really want to thank you guys for tuning in. I encourage anyone who is nervous about taking that next step toward technology or cybersecurity to make that jump. To the people who run Share the Mic in cybersecurity, I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to do this. To Nicole, thank you for doing that. Johnny, thank you for being here for me. Thank you for imparting everything with me. Thank you for staying up late at night over there. I know you got to get up early in the morning. Thank you for that, man. And I just want to say thank you to everyone listening, and everyone, you have a good evening, morning, good night whenever you listen to this. I really appreciate it, guys. And I'll see you next time. Peace out.